Okay, good morning and welcome to week one of our business and intelligence training program. In this first week, we'll be looking more on introduction to data and its relevance. I think it's very important that we take this class very seriously. So, first class of the day, introduction to data, understanding what data is, the various types, the sources, and the various formats of how data actually works in organizations. So, yes, my name is Marlon Nkemjika Okeke, a data analyst. I'll be taking you through on this first class. Very brief and very short, just to give you a brief insight to understand how data actually works in an organization. So when you hear the word data, what comes to your mind? A couple of things comes to mind. Data, information. It's so many things, and that's what we are going to unpack today, very briefly. Just looking at the periphery, like understanding what data is, and then we'll now start to take slower deep dives into all the various classes that we've planned out, right? So at the end of this class, it's expected that you understand what data is, some of the types of data, some of the sources of data, the formats of data, and even understanding how data is being applied in various organizations and various industries, right? So yes, now very briefly, we are going to start with, like I said, what is data, types of data, sources of data, data-driven decisions, and then industry application of data, right? So I'm going to give you three definitions. You have the basic definition, you have the what I'll call the business definition, and then what I'll call the theoretical definition. In all three, they are all the same. There is no rule or fast way around how data is, what data is, because it's all around us. So, for example, it's my first definition here, which is like a general definition, is that data is what raw facts, figures, or symbols that represent information before meaning is added. So, when you see numbers, when you see symbols, when you see pictures, you see charts, it's information about something. And then when you now pick that data, when you now pick that number, for example, receipts. Receipts will show 15,000. 15,000 doesn't tell anything until you go and say, oh, 15,000 for the sale of XYZ, right? The same thing applies as well to, you know, to every other basic stuff, numbers. You can see 200 somewhere. 200 doesn't mean anything until you understand that 200 is the number of students in a particular class. So that is what data is. It's facts, raw facts, figures, or symbols that represent information before meaning is now added, right? In the business world, data is seen as recorded information, whether numbers, text, images, signals, that organizations use to measure, to track, and to make business decisions. I gave a practical example before when I said 200 naira, for example, doesn't mean anything. But if I tell you 200 naira is the cost price for producing a bag of cement, yes, then now as a business person, it starts to make sense to you. So numbers, data in business is what? It's recorded information, whether numbers, text, images, or what, or signals that organizations use to what? To measure, to track, and then use that to make business decisions, right? So that's one of the key things you need to understand when it comes to data. And then finally, theoretical one, like any other one that anybody could pick in the school. It says data is what? A collection of qualitative and quantitative variables that can be stored, processed, or transmitted in digital or analog format. Well, I would say this is theory, and for considering that most of us here have escaped the school premises, I personally always stick to the first and the second, the basic one, and then the business one, because understanding the business one helps you to even understand how you move in your organizations, how you move in your businesses, right? So this is basically what data is all about. Now, there are more or less what, two or three types of data, right? So let's see, what are they? There is the structured, there is the semi-structured, and there is the what? The unstructured. So let's take a deep dive and understand what these three actually mean, right? Now, what is structured data? Structured data is like the apex, the beauty, what you see every day, right? This is what neat and what organized data, already cleaned and in a format that is easy to understand, right? So it's structured. You can see, okay, like I said, if you have Let's say I have 200, 15,000 naira, $2 million, 50 people, 20 men. It's not making sense because it's scattered, it's unstructured, right? When it becomes structured is when you see a spreadsheet that now shows you 200 naira is your cost price, or 200 naira per person times 50 people times 20 students gives you 100. It's become structured. So some of the types of structured data we see is what sales transactions, where you see some type of data that defines lists different sales transactions in a particular month or in a particular day. Prices of different products is structured. Is a product for a price, a product for a price. Bank balances are also structured because it has been able to take data from all your transactions that have come in, take data from transactions that have gone out, and giving you a balance, right? So there are four basic types of this structured data. There's the numerical, just like I said, sales transaction, product prices, bank balances. There's also what the categorical. So the categorical speaks to what when you have different categories. So you can have male or female, you can have married or single, you can have, black or blue regions, you can have north or south. So these are what categorically structured data, right? And then you also have the time series data where it speaks to different things, data that is structured based on time. So stock prices are structured based on time. If you see some of those stock prices on your news every time, you see, oh, on the 15th of January, stock price was 15,000. Next month, it climbed up to 20,000. That's an example of what time series structured data, right? Daily rainfall patterns. When you see, oh, on the 15th of August, we'll have rain. On the 25th, we might have 30 centimeters rain. On the 17th, you have 14 centimeters rain. That's an example of what time series. It works with time. It's structured based on time so that at every point in time, you have a data that works for that particular time, right? And then you have transactional data. Transactional data deals with each of the transactions that has happened on your account or on a particular in a particular situation. For example, ATM withdrawals, POS purchases, airline bookings, they are all based on what transactions. So these are the types of structured data you see in your environment every time. And how does it work? It's stored in databases like SQL, Oracle, and spreadsheets like Excel. And we'll come up to that in subsequent meetings on the types of databases, database management and database applications, right? And it also uses predefined fields, which is what I explained to you initially when I said you can have 50,000 naira, 20 people, 15 people, 50, 75. It's not structured. But when it's put into defined fields, for example, the customer name, the amount, the number of students, then you can now really get to understand. And like I said, the data becomes clean and in a format that is easy to understand, right? Also, now the next one is what semi-structured data. Semi-structured data is data that has some level of structure, but cannot be entirely useful reading or understanding it on its own. Some of those types of unstructured data is what your JSON files, which will all come up to this in subsequent classes. Your HTML pages, emails, log files, databases. So these are where data is being put in or kept, right? And most of the time, it's not fully structured because to an untrained eye, if you just look at it, you don't understand. Look at the picture by my side here. You can see transaction, dot, dot, open brackets, buyer, dot, dot, Fumi, item, dot, dot, rice, quantity, two, units, bags, date. As it is, let's be honest, if you saw this on somewhere else, you might have an idea, but it's not very clear. Unlike when you see it in a structured data, it becomes very clear to you. So this is an example of a JSON file or of a JSON code, right? That says what in a particular transaction that was made that Fumi is the buyer. What item did she buy? Rice. How many? Two. How many units of rice? Two bags. When did she buy it? On the 9th, on the 8th of September. Where did she buy it? Lagos. So it is not fully structured. But by the time you take this particular data as it is and impute it into let's say a Power BI or an Excel spreadsheet, then you see everything clearly. And you can use this to now decide, okay, Funmi bought 2 bags of rice. Let's say you now add one extra data to say 15,000 naira per bag. So which means on the 8th of September, Fumi bought 30,000 naira worth of rice. Now you can see how it moves from semi-structured to become what? Structured, right? So this is basically what semi-structured data speaks to. And then finally is your unstructured data. This is raw, messy data with no predefined format. And most times it's difficult for machines and applications to process directly. But once you are able to get a hang of it, you can get huge insights from it. Some of these examples are WhatsApp chats, social media posts, blogs, call center recordings, voice notes, and then YouTube videos, CCTV footage. These things, they don't have any particular format. For example, if you are looking at CCTV footage, for example, it doesn't give you any format, it's just a video. But if you pick the date, if you pick the time, if you pick information around the speech that's been made, you can be able to pull out a lot of information from it, right? So this is how unstructured data works. It's not structured, it's raw, it's messy. But once you can be able to analyze it, what happens? It becomes easy to get information from. And how does it work? It's stored in large repositories. It's called repos, right? And it requires things like AI, image recognition, text to speech to get a grasp of. For example, WhatsApp chats. It's not straightforwardly easy to pick WhatsApp chats at a go and understand everything that happens. But if most times, for example, if you go to your WhatsApp, at the end of your WhatsApp, you can what? Download all your messages. You download all your messages and it comes in something like a text format. And that text format is a mumbo jumbo of replies, senders, this person sent, this person replied. So it's not making any sense. But when you pick something like a let's say a speech recognition, for example, let's say someone did a voice note and the voice note doesn't really make any sense to you on that WhatsApp chat, and you're trying to follow the train of conversation, right? One of the things to do is if you use a text to speech, the text to speech engine, which is like an application, would do what? Would listen to the voice note, pick all the information, put it on a text format, then you take that same text format, apply it, read. It helps you to be able to get an idea of what is happening all through the conversation. And even from that conversation, you can now pick all the information you need, right? So this is how data works. It moves from unstructured to semi-structured and then becomes structured. And when it becomes structured, most of what filters around us, or most of what we pick and we understand is what is called structured data. And that's why as data analysts, it will be a marvelous thing for you to be able to understand not just how to move from semi-structured to structured, but to be able to move both unstructured to semi-structured, sorry, from unstructured to structured data, right? Using what the applications available and a good way of analyzing, right? So some of the sources of data that you know we see around is there's an internal source, there are external sources, but these are just basic examples of some of the sources of data. Internal sources of data most times are usually from companies. So as an organization, you can get data about your company within your organization. Okay, from human resources, how many workers do we have? From sales, what have we sold this year? From operations, how has our operations been going? Have we been opening our Have we been opening on time? Have we been closing on time? What have we been doing? How many people have been coming in, right? In manufacturing, how many things have we manufactured? What has been our cost of manufacturing? These are the internal sources of data. Now, for you to be able to fully make sense, you need to apply the internal and the external. So let me give you a practical example. I have not been selling in my business for a very long time, and I'm trying to understand what is happening. I have a social media platform where marketing is meant to be done, and I've pushed in, pushed out, and nothing is happening. So what happens? I take my sales data for the month of September, and I see that naturally I'm supposed to be selling what 20 million naira in a month, but I'm not selling 20 million naira. I'm selling, let's say, 5 million naira, and then because I only have that data of what I sell, I don't really know why I am not selling like that. And then I go outside, I look at my social media, and I realize that people are not buying my product because A, B, C, D, E. So getting the data from internal is not enough. Internal gives you an idea, okay, this is what is happening. External also gives you an idea of why it is happening that way, right? So The sources of data, we have different sources of data. These are just some examples that I've given to you: weather reports, bureau of statistics, social media. These are just basic examples. But there are so many sources of data in the world today, right? And you come across them as we start to move on in the program. Now, why does data matter? Running a business or anything in life without data is like driving blindfolded. Have you ever tried to drive blindfolded? You are moving, but you are moving nowhere. And that takes me back to the, if you remember this previous thing when I spoke about sales, I just spoke about how social media is. You can keep selling and selling and selling, but if you are not selling to the right people, if you are not selling enough, then you are not actually selling, right? So if you don't have data, you might not be able to tell why some of the problems happening in your business exist, or you cannot be able to tell your organization why things are the way they are. And that's why data is important. Every business needs it. Every company is looking for it because when they have data, the limits to what they can do is endless. They have a lot of opportunities for them to be able to do something, right? Now, data-driven decisions, it works in this way, in a format of data, information, knowledge, wisdom. When you have data, you process the data to information. The information gives you a knowledge. And then based on the knowledge, you apply the wisdom to grow the business. For example, like we said here, data is what sales receipts for October, right? In your company, these are the number of sales. This was the receipts of all the things we sold. We use that to get information of what is the total sales that was made in October in the organization. And then based on that, we can now say, okay, oh, there's a huge spike in sales on Fridays in October, which is your knowledge, right? Understanding that there's a huge spike in sales based on what I saw in my sales data for October. And then I can now come up to say, oh, because of that, I need to stock more on Fridays. Otherwise, our sales will not what rise. So this is an example of how data-driven decisions take place. You have data processed into information. It gives you knowledge. And based on the knowledge that you have, you now apply that knowledge to your business to be able to grow the business. So briefly, let's quickly look at some real-time industry applications that are happening when it comes to data. For example, in health, you can see the Nigerian Center for Disease Control (NCDC) monitors data of patients in hospitals and uses it to what to detect a new virus or an epidemic. Right? For example, Guaranty Trust Bank can look through withdrawals from a particular customer and detect some unusual activity, and then flags it to EFCC for fraud. So these are the examples of how data is really applied in organizations or in companies. Or for a farmer keeps on monitoring his cassava yield through weather forecast. So he looks at the weather forecast month on month. Oh, weather is going to the rainfall is going to be in this so pattern. Then he adjusts himself to say, okay, you know what, to get the maximum yield on this cassava crop, let me apply this weather forecast and plant in so months, right? And then improve my yield. And that is one of the ways. Jumia, for example, monitors the number of purchases made by people of different categories and provides recommendation to you, when you shop. So, for example, you want to buy, cement, right? Or let's say you want to buy a shoe. Jumia has a catalog or a data of the number of people who have bought so number of shoes, where they are located, their age, their demographics, and all that, and uses that to now say, look, based on what we have seen, we recommend ABC products to you, which is why sometimes when you go online, there are some things you're already looking for in your head, and the system is already picking it, right? Because there is your data is moving across different sectors. So when you write, oh, I want, or you have gone, or let's say you've gone on a social media platform and you've seen something you want, you've liked it 4 or 5 times on social media. What happens is the data is already being tracked by the system. System picks up the data and sends it to some of these organizations who are already having these products in stores. And what do they do? They start to provide you with what recommendations through social media marketing and all that. So that is some of the ways by which data is being what applied in the industry. For example, Dangote can monitor the demand for cement in the market and say, you know what, based on this demand for cement in the market, I'm going to monitor the number of bags or cement that I'll be able to produce every year, and then determine, okay, if people want cement in, or if there's huge demand for cement in September, we'll produce more cement in September to meet up with the demand. So some other real life applications, for example, in banking, some of the data that is being collected, ATM usage logs, customer transaction history, account opening trends, complaint logs, and they are used to what, to predict peak ATM usage to reduce downtime. Which is why sometimes when you go to the bank, that's why the bank tells you 24/7 we have money, because they are constantly monitoring what the ATMs to see what is happening, and then they can use it to predict what downtime, right? Also, they use the customer data to offer personalized financial products. This is one thing I did a lot in the bank. I always look through different products, different customers on my database in the bank, and I'll use that to say, you know what, when the customer comes up to me and say, "Oh, I noticed you have a child. Can you open a child's kids savings account? Oh, I noticed that you have a lot of money here. Why don't you invest it in treasury bills and fixed deposit?" That is an example of how data is being used in banking, right? And just like the example that I gave before on GT Bank, you also use the data around customers' information to monitor compliance and detect what fraud, right? Also in healthcare, for example, Ministry of Health, even your normal health institutions, right? Patient records, disease outbreak reports, bed occupancy, drug inventory. So if there's a spike in the number of people having malaria in a particular area, right? And some of them, there are fatalities that are occurring. What happens is what it becomes a serious issue. There's that data. If it is properly analyzed, you can be able to tell that, oh, there's a huge problem here, and then track what disease outbreaks that are happening, allocate resources accordingly, right? And then use that data to plan vaccination campaigns and improve health insurance coverage and all that. So many other things. So these are some of the examples. Also, let's say education as well, right? Your WAEC and your NECO, what did they do? They can monitor student performance data, exam attendance, school location, and use that to determine and identify underperforming schools or regions, and allocate teachers to train them or resources. Also use that to also predict exam malpractice hotspots, right? So if WAEC has historical data of where there's malpractice across different regions in a particular time, they can now beef up security or beef up how they conduct exams in those particular areas, right? Retail, your Jumia, like I said, your e-commerce platforms, they monitor, they collect data on what customer browsing behavior, your purchase history, product reviews, delivery times, and use that to recommend products for you. So if they notice that you've always been browsing for shoes, like I said, they start to recommend products based on what your user behavior, right? And they also use that data to optimize their inventory, monitor their inventory, understand it, and then plan good delivery routes. I mean, using the demand data, right? And then finally, in transport and energy, for example, in transport, your GPS data from BRT buses, all your BRT buses have GPS data, and then there are road incident reports, traffic camera feeds. The transport, the Lamata, I mean, collect this data and they use it to predict traffic congestion, adjust traffic light timing, inform road users too of some of the issues on different congestion on the routes and all that. So that is one of the things where Google, and that's some of the ways where Google themselves get data for their Google Maps, right? So these are some of the examples in energy to smart meter readings, customer complaints, outage reports are now being used. Collected data are used to detect energy theft and unusual consumption patterns, and then plan maintenance and reduce downtime. So these are in essence, these are some of the major applications of data, right, in the world today. And then we've covered a lot and seen how data has a huge impact on how businesses and organizations work, right? So this is basically our first class today on this, and I'm going to give us a very brief and short classwork activity. I want you to, based on the learnings, identify and provide three types of each of the following data available to you within your environment. So you are going to come up with three types of data each, three types of each of the following: structured, unstructured, semi-structured. Three types of that data you can find within your environment. And then we can come back in our unblocking session in the evening and look at the activity, see who has been able to perform, and then any other questions we have to ask, we can be able to type and and go forward with that. So thank you all so much. Welcome to your first class. I really hope I wasn't too fast, and even if I was too fast, the unblocking session is also another opportunity for us to go through again and see what needs to be resolved. Thank you all so much, and welcome to your first class. Thank you.